Hello everybody from Arlo White in the Live Broadcast Studio, and welcome to highlights of another excellent day's golf on Super Saturday in Greenbrier. Now, Live Golf history was made by this man, the high flyers Brendan Steele. This is his second shot at the par 5 17th. In it goes, the first albatross in league history, and it's Brendan Steele who is all smiles. Cam Smith teed off at 18 today. He made a par there, then proceeded to card a 27 over the front 9 holes to briefly take the lead. This was his third at 12, an eagle for Cam there, but he was overall level par through his last 8 holes and his 3 off the lead. Brooks Koepka is seeking a 5th Live Golf title. No other man has more than 3. A pair of 64s for Brooks. He's 12 under par. That was his birdie putt at 18. But today was all about Jon Rahm, who is hunting a second straight win in the Live Golf League after his first victory at the JCB in the UK, and he's also hunting down Wako Niemann for the overall title of Live Golf League champion for 2024. A remarkable round of 62 today for Jon Rahm. That was his second into 17. This is his tee shot at 18. And you wouldn't bet against Jon Rahm going back-to-back and taking a lead into the final regular season event in Chicago in 3 weeks' time, seeking a first prize of $18 million. And he rounded things off superbly with a birdie putt at the first, and 8 under par 62 today. Jon Rahm will take a 2-stroke lead into Championship Sunday. Ripper lead the team comp by 1.
Welcome into an all-new episode of Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us as we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Coming off another great card of action, this time in Kansas City, BKFC Fight Night. It delivered for sure. You had a lot of action, a lot of great fights, a lot of finishes, and a lot of great fans there as well. We're going to break all of that down for you. Later on, we're going to talk to one of the guys who made his debut on that card and get to know him a little bit more. The heavyweight Anthony, the Warrior of Christ, Garrett. Of course, a 16-second knockout of John Orr on that card in his first fight in the BKFC. They got a good interview with him on the BKFC site and app where you can go check it out. It talks about how he was expecting that to go longer. He was going to play from the outside. As you saw him in the beginning of that fight, kind of step back and throw that jab. He was looking to test things out, work from the outside, and then eventually show his power. But the 6'5" monster that he is, ended up getting dragged into a fight by Orr that really got real close real quick and ended real quick because Orr tasted his power. A couple of big punches. You saw Orr grab at his eye, go down. And then afterwards, when he got knocked down to the mat, completely dazed and confused, didn't know where he was. Good call by the referee to stop that one as Orr was taking some quick beating in that fight by some good punches by our man Anthony Garrett, who we'll get to know coming up later in the show. We're also going to break things down here with the BKFC. We got a little bit of a break, a 1-week rest here, but with no cards, and right back into action in Edmonton to close out the month with a Prospect Series card. So we have that coming up. We're also going to look ahead at some of the stuff we have coming in September. When you have a nice little break like this, a little short break even as it is, it lets you look ahead a little more than just looking at what we just did and what's coming up next. So we're going to look at that Utah card a little bit coming up on September 6th with the women leading the way in that one. Faria and Masan Wong. We'll look at the top 2 fights and how important those ones are. We'll also recap a little more this fight card that we just had in Kansas City. Talk about all the fights, all the action, and maybe not a fighter making an excuse, but someone in his circle kind of giving us reasons why he lost. We'll see if we think those hold a little water. And then we'll also look forward to what's coming up in Hollywood, Florida, because we got a bunch of fight announcements in the last week to round out that card. It is going to be a stacked one. We knew the top fights of that. Now we're going to know the rest of the card. I'll break it down for you what we are going to see down in Hollywood, Florida in a couple weeks, September 13th. And then we'll finish up by looking at the rankings after we talk to our man Anthony Garrett and find out where we think some of these guys deserve to be, if they're in the right spots in some of these divisions, and why don't we have a champion for some of these divisions? Or, are some of the no longer champions deserving of being ranked in the pound for pound? All that coming up on this show throughout the rest of the hour, so make sure you stay tuned and follow us the rest of the way. But first, as we said, had great action down in Kansas City, so why don't we break down the top 2 fights on that card? Those were the biggest ones. And then next segment, we'll look a little bit at what else we saw. But first, last, but the biggest, first one we'll talk about is the welterweight bout between the Gypsy Jake Lindsay and Elvin El Bandito Brito. Now, of course, they're number 2 and number 4 in that division going into this fight. Big fight for both of these guys. Can put them in title contention. Lindsay, a guy who felt that he should have been in title contention already with his past performances with the BKFC. 4-0 up until that point before losing to Gogo Slavetsky, so he thought he should get back into that title picture. We heard from Dave Feldman that he kind of thinks he deserved more promotion, deserved to get paid more. Well, he got a headlining spot here in his hometown in Kansas City. Did he prove that it was worth it going against the former welterweight champ in Elvin El Bandito Brito, a guy who, had made a statement in his last fight after losing back-to-back fights before that he was coming in there. He was looking for heads. He was looking for finishes, not leaving it in the judges' hands. We talked to him last week, down in Puerto Rico where he trains, of course. Big storm rolling through there. He wasn't worried about it. We'll talk about in the next segment that maybe he should have been a little bit more worried about it. But still, he got to Kansas City. He was there for the fight, and he did what he could, but it was not enough as Jake Lindsay takes home the decision victory. It was a weird, guard that Brito was using there with the high elbow throughout the fight, switching stances back and forth. But Lindsay did a good job using the jab, and there's a lot of clinch work. And while Brito had his moments throughout this fight where, he got his shots in, and it looked like Lindsay was doing just a little bit more, working the body in those clinches, he gets the decision. I mean, it was also interesting, of course, which we'll talk about in the next segment a little more, that you had this judging. And this is probably the only one that really factored in, maybe. Of course, it might have factored in the strategy of some of the finishes we saw throughout the card, but that you had the judging being known by the fighters throughout, because it was in Kansas City, Kansas. Kansas, a state where it is legal, or not legal, but it is a state where they use the open scoring system. So you got to see that throughout this fight, maybe a little more than you saw in some of the other ones. But as we went through it, I thought the first couple rounds were, not dominated by Lindsay, but I thought he won the exchanges more. We saw him land more shots throughout a lot of those rounds. When you looked at the scoring throughout it in the first round, you had 2 of the judges going towards Lindsay, 1 towards Brito. You get to round 2, I thought, again, Lindsay won that one probably just a little bit more. They had 2 go to Brito, 1 go to Lindsay as far as the judges, so that was 19-19 after 2. So then it became, who's going to win those next 3 rounds? Because throughout this fight, we didn't have guys get dropped. So I thought Lindsay won the 3rd. I gave him the 4th, maybe even the 5th. I thought, to me, in my scoring, 50-45 Lindsay. You looked at the judges, all 3 went 49-46, so they went 4-1 Lindsay. I could say you could do that. I could agree with that one. It was a close fight throughout, like we said, a lot of clinch work, a lot of punches there. So, depending on how you're judging it, is it the volume? Because by punch numbers, Lindsay was heavily ahead. I think at the end of the fight, he landed something more than like 70 more punches. Outthrew him by like 60 punches and had a way better striking percentage than Brito by 13%. So it was, by those numbers, a dominating performance by Lindsay. Now, I'm not going to call it that because Brito was in that fight the whole time. He was landing some punches, could have won a round, maybe 2. I would say maybe 1 at most. But, if you're slanted towards him, I could understand you giving him a little bit more leeway. But Jake Lindsay, the hometown fighter, clearly was the better control of things. At times, he was using the jab to keep Brito at length, keep him at distance, not let him land some of those shots before they got in the clinches. When they were in the clinches, I thought he had better body work. More body work. There were some times that Brito landed some good body shots that, probably could have caused some hurt to Lindsay, but he's a tough guy. He's one of the best in the BKFC, former UFC fighter. He knows how to fight at top levels and did not, get in any situation where he got knocked down, where he got dropped, or even really slowed down. And he ends up getting the decision victory, of course, after the fight. I'm sure you saw it on social media. He just called out anyone. He said, I'm a fighter. I just like to fight. I don't care about titles. And, threw out some names like Eddie Alvarez, like some other guys. He said he doesn't care about just fighting for the title, even though he should very well be in line for that title shot. But he's saying he just wants to fight because he thought it was a fighting organization, not a popularity one. So maybe taking some shots there at the BKFC and maybe, them putting some guys ahead of him, whether it be on promotion or, how often they fight or the pay. All that are, apparently gripes he's had with the organization. But we'll see what his next for Jake Lindsay after a great performance over a dangerous opponent in Elvin Brito. Then at middleweight, you had Zeb CWV Vincent fighting in his hometown against Doug Cold Red Coltrane. We talked to both these guys before the fight. Of course, Cold Red coming off of his loss to Dave Mundell in the title fight, looking to get back into that picture. You had CWV Vincent coming in and 2-1 the BKFC, lost his first fight, then is subsequently cut down in weight, got into this weight class where he's probably a lot more well-suited and showed it against his hometown fans against Coltrane. They came out very aggressive, especially Vincent early on. Both guys were throwing big. Coltrane looked to be landing a little bit better early on, but then Vincent started turning things up towards the end of the first round, especially with a big combo with about 40 seconds left. I gave it a 10-9. Vincent the first round on the late combo. Judges scored it 2-1 Coltrane. 2 of them went Coltrane, 1 went Vincent, of course, as I said, open scoring in Kansas. Then, to start round 2, Coltrane drops Vincent early on with an overhand right. Looked like Vincent saw it coming, kind of turned and tried to get out of the way. Didn't completely get out of the way. Maybe gave him a little bit better spot that he landed right there on the temple, and that puts him down to the mat. Vincent came back throughout the rest of the round, but automatically by the scoring, 10-8 there for Coltrane. Judges had two of them won 2018, one 2017. Round 3, things started to slow down. Vincent was still aggressive, not nearly as aggressive. Coltrane looking like he started getting gas there, so Vincent started turning it up. Again, I gave that round to him, as did the judges, and we have a 28-28 fight in my scorebook. A little bit different by all 3 judges going into that 4th round, but that's all that matters there, because in the 3rd round, you had Coltrane start to swell in that left eye. Vincent took advantage of it in the 4th, kept pummeling him. They had a stoppage actually for Vincent getting poked in the eye. In that time, the ref gets the doctor over, and that's the end of the fight. Coltrane's too swollen to continue. Zeb Vincent gets a TKO by doctor stoppage.
What has happened? What has transpired here at the First Bank Center here in Denver, Colorado? It wasn't just a big night of fights. It was a big night of memorable moments.
Conor McGregor with us here in Denver, Colorado. Good left hand from Rockhold. Right hand right back from Mike Perry. Now 3-0 in BKFC.
Could I get a face-off with Conor McGregor, man?
It's an incredible setup here, incredible matchmaking, incredible storytelling. Oh, you had to come here. All these fighters that step in here are warriors, and all have my respect. And I'm into this game, yeah. We'll be into this, yeah.
And we are live here in the Maverick Center here in Salt Lake City, Utah, folks. What a night. It is going to be historic indeed for BKFC 56.
Whoever's the king of violence right here, this is going to be a great fight.
Perry on the turn, coming for the left hand. Right hand from Mike Perry, double jab. Who's the king of violence? I am!
Combat fighting in its purest form, bare knuckle fighting in the city of angels.
80 seconds remaining.
We've got the biggest announcement in the BKFC history we're about to make, so let's make that announcement.
What's up, Knuckle Mania? The notorious Conor McGregor here. Ladies and gentlemen, the huge announcement that I have for you today. Conor McGregor, myself, and McGregor Sports and Entertainment is now an owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Welcome to the big leagues. David Feldman, baby, we did it.
He's now an owner of BKFC with us, and we're going to take this motherfucking thing all the way to the top now.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid, and we'll continue to look at this great fight card we had in Kansas City this past weekend, this BKFC fight night. Now, we talked earlier about the top fight, the Elvin Brito versus Jake Lindsay. It was a great fight, went all 5 rounds. In fact, the only one to go all 5 rounds, as we'll talk about in a second, but not without some controversy. Of course, guys like Lorenzo Hunt, of course, the juggernaut, a big buddy of Elvin Brito, having trained with him down in Champ Camp, Puerto Rico, to the jungle team. But saying that he saw it the other way, of course, him and Lindsay got into it back and forth with it a little bit there, as you see. He scored it 3-2 for Brito, giving him the first 3. As I said when I was breaking down the fight, if you were in favor of Brito or, slanted towards him, then maybe you could give him some rounds. 3 of them, yeah, I don't see how that happens. But still, a good fight back and forth between those guys. A lot of action, both guys throwing well. But, there's always a backstory between what's going on with fighters. What happens, in their lives. We don't always know it. Sometimes, that can cause them to have some issues. And according to Elvin Brito's wife, saying, I'm not making excuses in a post that she put up, but here are some excuses about what he went through before this fight. Now, we talked to Elvin Brito before the fight last week, as, you probably have figured out if you didn't know already. We taped this earlier, in the week before these fights actually happened. So we talked to Elvin Brito on Tuesday last week as a tropical storm was rolling through. He wasn't worried about it. He was flying out Wednesday saying, I think we'll be fine. Obviously not, from what his wife has put up, that his original flight was canceled because of the storm. They lost power on the island completely, so he had to push off to the next day. Then when he had his flight, apparently there was a miscommunication with his coach, who did not make that flight. Then when his coach went for another flight, after that, his car broke down on the way to the airport, so he did not make the flight at all and had to end up missing the fight completely for Elvin Brito not be there in his corner. Also, Elvin had to fly to Chicago to go get to Kansas City because of the diversions with the storm, because of changing flights. He had to go fly to a different city and wait there. Basically didn't get to Kansas City until just a couple hours before weigh-ins the day before, and had to do that weight cut himself because of not having his coach and some of his team there due to the storm and the travel issues that we talked about. And then all that went and fought after it. So, you got to give a lot of credit, obviously, to Elvin Brito for going through what he went through and still showing up and making the fight and going through with it. There were plenty of people who would not do that, who after those issues would say, you know what, I'm not putting myself in this, in this disadvantageous position here when I'm about to go do battle with a guy and have, my face punched in. So I want to be at my best and we have to push this off. Luckily for the BKFC, Elvin Brito did not do that. He is a badass and, needs to be given credit for doing that. But, this obviously affected him in the fight, according to his wife. So we'll see. Hopefully, we get a better version of Elvin Brito, the one we expected coming in this next fight. I know that he wants to get right back in there quick. And Jake Lindsay actually even responded to this one, saying that he actually went through his own issues as well right before the fight, issues with his ex, about his daughter, about being able to see her. Not his daughter, his son. So that, he had his own mental issues he was going through with this fight. But, them being true fighters and tough guys, they went through with it and they pushed through and put on a great performance for the fans. So we give both of them a lot of credit. So unfortunately, might not have been the fight that we thought we were getting. Might not have been the best of both these guys, who are some of the top fighters that we're hoping for and expected. Still was a very good fight. And as we said, much kudos and credit to these guys for going through that as you are dealing with major issues in your life, still pushing through and having the ability to focus and get yourself ready and, get in there and do battle with another human being with everything else swirling in your head. So credit to all of them. Wish that we didn't have these issues and we got to see the best of the best and, a epic battle that, we hoped for, but still it was a great fight nonetheless. And as I mentioned, the only one, if you hadn't watched, that went to a decision. Every other fight on this card, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, ended by TKO. Only 2 of them even got to a 4th round. And that was Zev Vince's win over Doug Coltrane that we just talked about, and Blaine Warbritton's win over Justin Martinez. But there were some great fights throughout, going to maybe the 2nd or 3rd round, some of them even some 1st round finishes, as we talked about with Anthony Garrett being a guy we're going to talk to next about his finish. It's just 16 seconds. There were finishes throughout this fight card. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to not just the fighters and their toughness, but also, with these fight night cards, you get the smaller ring. While you and me think nothing of it and just think, oh, yeah, whatever. A ring's a ring. You get in there, you fight. What these guys and girls train in and what they're used to can dictate, their fight style. So if you're used to moving more, if you're used to getting out of the way of some of these punches, you might in your head know, if I'm in this part of the ring, I have this many steps, or I can slide to the left or slide to the right and get out of it. Once that gets shrunk and smaller, a lot of them have trouble maybe sometimes adapting to that. And I think that pushes the action, that pushes more, fights and finishes, as opposed to maybe some more dancing and decisions. So we get a fight night card like this sometimes. They've tried it out on other cards that weren't fight nights earlier in the year, but I think right now the smaller ring, if I'm not mistaken, is pretty much confined to, fight nights and prospect series cards. And they factored that into Kansas City here, and you got a lot of finishes because of that. Great wins by Tyler Jones, by J.W. Kisser, Eduardo Peralta, Blaine Warburton, Charlene Gellner, Anthony Garrett, Matt Guyman, and Devin Schwann. All those getting finishes. Maybe some of those getting helped out by the smaller ring. So, when you see a fight night, you may not know all the fighters as well as you do in some of these other cards, but it might be just as, if not more exciting than a pay-per-view or Knucklemania, because you get the smaller ring and it pushes some of the action a little bit more and gets some great finishes like we saw. And also, I shouted out before, I wish we had it in every state that's legalized with the BKFC or just in combat sports in general. Open scoring. We got to see that here again. Being in Kansas, I love it. It's awesome. I think it gives the better situation for the fans, knowing what's going on in the fight, how the judge is scoring it, because how many times you think that you know exactly what's happening and then you get to the scores and it's different from what you thought. Or, if you're like me, now I don't think we have it yet for the BKFC, but if you're a bettor, that could be huge too. If you're getting news on how it's being scored as it's going on, it could determine where you want to jump in, where you have some in-game lines or in-fight lines for combat sports. Now, again, I don't think we have that yet for the BKFC, but, it's UFC and other organizations that you have that it can determine things. And if we get that for the BKFC, that can maybe help popularity even a little bit more. So thank you, Kansas, for being one of the forerunners in the open scoring. I love it in fights. I think we need it everywhere.
Hello everybody from Arlo White in the Live Broadcast Studio, and welcome to highlights of another excellent day's golf on Super Saturday in Greenbrier. Now, Live Golf history was made by this man, the high flyers Brendan Steele. This is his second shot at the par 5 17th. In it goes, the first albatross in league history, and it's Brendan Steele who is all smiles. Cam Smith teed off at 18 today. He made a par there, then proceeded to card a 27 over the front 9 holes to briefly take the lead. This was his third at 12, an eagle for Cam there, but he was overall level par through his last 8 holes and his 3 off the lead. Brooks Koepka is seeking a 5th Live Golf title. No other man has more than 3. A pair of 64s for Brooks. He's 12 under par. That was his birdie putt at 18. But today was all about Jon Rahm, who is hunting a second straight win in the Live Golf League after his first victory at the JCB in the UK, and he's also hunting down Wako Niemann for the overall title of Live Golf League champion for 2024. A remarkable round of 62 today for Jon Rahm. That was his second into 17. This is his tee shot at 18. And you wouldn't bet against Jon Rahm going back-to-back and taking a lead into the final regular season event in Chicago in 3 weeks' time, seeking a first prize of $18 million. And he rounded things off superbly with a birdie putt at the first, an 8 under par 62 today. Jon Rahm will take a 2-stroke lead into Championship Sunday. Ripper lead the team comp by 1.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. Let's continue with the show and look ahead a little bit over the next couple segments. Coming up next, we'll talk to our man Anthony Garrett about his great win at BKFC Fight Night, Kansas City, 16-second knockout of John Orr. Coming up next, but after that, we're going to look ahead to all these fights that we just had announced for the Hollywood card coming up in September. It is stacked from top to bottom. We'll break that down a little bit more for you. But before that, we got a fight card right in front of us. Before that, we have, of course, the Prospect Series, of course, in Edmonton at the end of the month. A little more of unknown fighters there as we continue to see what Canada has to offer for the BKFC. Looking forward to seeing them travel up there and see maybe the next generation of some of these fighters. Maybe we get a future champion in there. We'll find out. But speaking of champions, we have one coming up September 6th, Salt Lake City, Utah. And of course, the Misfit, Christine Faria, will return and defend her title against Jade Masang Wong. Why don't we look at the top 2 fights that we're going to see on that card and break them down a little bit as we have some time here with a little break in the action of that schedule. Now, of course, Faria, the number 1, the champion in that division. Number 1 contender is Jade Masang Wong. So we have a situation here, which you don't always get, where the top ranked fighter fights for the title against the champion. Now, there was some debate, we had a couple months ago, because when you look at those rankings, it's a little jumbled, of course, because Taylor Starling, Britton Hart, both still in there, even though they have dropped down to 115, where, of course, Britton Hart is the champion. But you had Christine Vichen's return to action down in Hollywood, Florida, put on a great performance, and she has a win over Jade Masang Wong. So, we asked the question out there, does she jump her? Does she become the number 1 with that win after returning to action after a while off? Is that win good enough to get her number 1 in the rankings, or at least the next title shot? We were waiting to see if Masang Wong was going to get that title for a while, because, we last saw her back in March up in Canada the last time they did a prospect series up there. She headlined that card, of course, against Gabrielle Roman and dispatched her with a nice victory. Great performance. But Vichen's had the win over her. So does she get to jump her now with a win of her own? No, she does not, apparently, as we finally get to see her get her title shot. Of course, Faria, the champion, was supposed to defend this title back in Newcastle back in May. Unfortunately, that fight fell through because of the retirement of her opponent, Heather Hardy, who, of course, had her issues from her boxing that she thought was going to clear up. Did not, so she called it a night, called it a day, called it a career for all of fighting, not just in the BKFC, where she was going to make her debut for, she was a former champion in boxing, former MMA fighter as well in Bellator, decided to hang it up, the gloves completely, to protect her health a little bit better and just focus on training. So we did not see the Misfit. We've seen her at events over the last couple months, bringing her belt, showing her face, being out there with the fans. Haven't seen her in the ring. Now we finally will get to see her again against Jade Masang Wong. Now, she, of course, the Misfit is one of the most dangerous fighters in the BKFC. Not in this division, not in the women's division, in the BKFC. She is one of the most fiercest, most dangerous, technical, but powerful fighters you will see there in this organization. Just ripping through people, of course. Has not lost a fight since back in 2019 against Peralta. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row that she has done. Of course, back-to-back wins over Beck Rawlings, that she just dismantled her in those fights. You had the fight against Taylor Starling, where she turned her into a meme. She beat her up so bad. So she is one of the best, and now she will try to put that title again on the line against Jade Masang Wong, who has shown some power. Had a great fight against Starling, beat her, then finished Gabrielle Roman up in Canada. We'll see if she can do it again, coming back over the border into the U.S. against the Misfit in Salt Lake City. Going to be a tough uphill battle for her. She has shown she's game for it, but everybody thinks they are until they step in there against the Misfit. We'll see if she can do it one more time. But you also have on that card the co-main event between Jeremy Little Heathen Stevens and Bobby ODB Taylor. Now we're going to talk about Taylor a little bit more, being involved in those rankings in the lightweight division. So he's one of the top fighters in that division. Jeremy Stevens, on the other hand, coming in here 1-0. He beat Jimmy Rivera, who's, of course, a tough game opponent, one of the best in the featherweight division. Going to be fighting for that title against Kai Stewart, hopefully. We will see. I've heard some rumors about that one that I will not discuss until they are announced. But beat Jimmy Rivera, but didn't really beat him. That was stopped by the doctors in a situation that I thought Rivera was coming on and going to win that fight. I thought he was ahead. Unfortunately, one of those where the genesis of bare knuckle, where everything is just open. Guys get open a lot easier. And some of his cuts were too bad for the doctors. Stevens gets that win. Now he steps in against ODB Taylor, coming off a win over Ryan Roberts in Omaha back in May, who was one of the best in this division. So can he up his performance and be even better and get another win and maybe put himself in those rankings? We will see. Both these fights very important out in Salt Lake City in a couple weeks.
What a chance it is for Adam Paxton and Victor Tingstrom to pick up their first weekly titles. Adam Paxton, well, it's been the dream debut so far for him. For Victor Tingstrom, he'll feel like this is a moment a little while coming. A place in the final up for grabs for one.
You can do it. Make that double 18 away for a place in the final.
Wesley Plaisir was beaten, knocked out by Mike Warburton in a last leg decider.
That is what they are playing for. They are playing for the trophy. They are playing for the big prize pot, and they are playing for a place in the £25,000 Champions Week.
97.
There is a point you feel that reality will surely kick in for Adam Paxton, who's here on debut, who watches the Super Series almost every single week. He was happy just to be playing in a group. This could be the leg that we talk about at the end of the night as being the one that changed the final, because Adam Paxton has just gone cold at the moment.
Bang on cue.
He doesn't just get two, he gets the lot.
Adam should take out the 16 out. If not, Mike's just behind him.
Shot on the fifth leg.
Can Paxton deliver one of the biggest moments of his career so far? He can. Double 12. What a moment that is from Adam Paxton. Mike Warburton was looking at 60 to win the match.
14.
Paxton, here's your moment. He approaches the hockey with confidence, with time, and delivers. Adam Paxton on debut. The boy, the fanboy, comes to the Super Series and wins.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. Another great card delivered once again. Kansas City Fight Night for the BKFC this past weekend was awesome. A lot of great action back and forth, some great performances. And one of those was a guy who made his debut for the BKFC, Anthony, the Warrior of Christ, Garrett, the heavyweight, who needed just 16 seconds to finish off John Orr. We bring him now on the show and get ready to meet him and get to know him a little bit more. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us. Quick fight, you know, it's hard to tell what exactly happened looking from the outside. I think I went back and watched about 3 or 4 different times. The exchange you guys got in there in that first clinch that ended up first making him kind of grab at his eye and then making him go down all dazed and confused. From your perspective, what happened? Was it the left or the right that caught him initially that kind of shook him? Because then even, you know, you threw a couple more punches. It didn't look like those landed as cleanly, but, you know, he kind of went down. What happened to you in the 16 seconds going against your opponent there, Orr?
I mean, yeah, when the fight started, I actually took a step back and threw a jab just because I knew he was a, you know, kind of a brawler, heavy hitter kind of guy from his past fights that I've seen. And I wanted to create space and try to use my reach. And he started throwing lazy jabs. So I had initially thrown a left hook that he stepped in and I whiffed, but then he just went straight for the clinch. And I felt an uppercut touch me on my chin. And he went to throw another one, and I rolled out and threw a looping right overhand that caught him right on his nose and cheek and eye. I mean, I have a pretty big fist, and it just sent him back. And I felt him kind of go a little limp. So when I was holding him, I pulled his head in with my left and let go, kind of sent him in like this, and just smashed him with that rear uppercut. And I swung a few more times, but, you know, in the heat of the moment, he's already fallen down, kind of dazed, confused. None of those landed, and he went clean against the ropes and just couldn't recover from it fully.
So it was a great performance by you there. You know, you just used the dirty boxing wherever the fight took you. A great shot there that you landed to mess him up. Obviously, when he went down, was completely dazed and confused. The ref started 10 count and didn't even have to continue because he knew there was no way he was continuing that fight. But now that you've fought many different disciplines, promotions throughout your career, last 8 years or so, you've done MMA, you've done glove boxing, now the BKFC. What was it that drew you to BKFC, and how'd you feel about your first experience with the organization?
Yeah, so originally I had done one of the BKFC tryouts back a couple years ago when they had Chris Lieben helping out and doing mitt work for him. So I've always been super curious with doing it with them. I just like the concept of it and the style of everything, and kind of just the violence behind it's really cool. And I had gone and done a Bellator fight instead of pursuing them fully, and then stuck with MMA for a while. Like you said, I've done kickboxing, Muay Thai, normal boxing, and I got hit up by a good friend of mine, Joe Wooster, out of Kansas City, who was matchmaking for BKFC for this one. And they had John Orr's original opponent, Zach Hughes, I believe is his name, pulled out on him. And that was kind of, you saw the weigh-ins between me and John. He had told me, he appreciated me taking the fight on short notice. So when you saw us laughing back to each other, it was because he called Zach Hughes a for pulling out, and said he was scared because there was no reason given, I guess, behind it. I'm not sure if there's beef between those guys, but maybe they'll fight down the road, or I'll fight maybe Zach Hughes in the future. Who knows what'll happen? But I took the fight on somewhat short notice, just because this is my work right here. It's a boxing gym in Dallas, Texas. So I'm always training, always working, and was ready to go no matter what, and just took the fight to give it a try. And to answer your question on my experience, absolutely loved it. One of the best promotions I've ever fought for. Even though I was the third fight of the night, they made me feel like I was the main event, like I was the star. Super accommodating, super professional. Probably one of the best, like I said, best promotions I've ever fought for. And I mean that for real. It was an incredible experience, and I do want to do more. I don't think 16 seconds was enough to show what I can do, and I want to show them what I can do and the fans what I can do as well.
Well, it was a great performance. As you said, coaching there at Dallas, I know you moved there to be closer to your daughter. And when you look at your social media, you can see how much, how big a part of her life you are, and how big a part of your life she is. What is that like for you to kind of have that dichotomy of being a girl dad and doing everything for her, protecting her, then having daddy's work where he's got to go and beat people up for money sometimes?
Yeah, so she's only 5, so she actually doesn't know what dad does. She'll know down the road, obviously. If I'm ever around her and I have bumps and bruises, I just say they're accidents, boo-boos, because she's too young to know fully what I do. She's kind of cute. She knows that I work out and coach people and lift weights, so that's what she tells people is, he lifts weights, he's strong, he's big. She'll call me big guy sometimes. It's really cute. But being around her and being closer to her is everything to me, and the most important thing with my life right now. So she's more important than the whole fighting side, but it's my career and it's how I make money, and I make a living doing it. So I'm going to do it as long as I can. But yeah, she always comes first. Like you said, being a girl dad is a great thing and very fun and very amazing experience. And yeah, protecting her and being able to protect her is pretty cool too. So yeah, it's a good thing.
And I'm sure you're doing a great job, and she must think you're pretty accident prone then with all the boo-boos that daddy comes home with sometimes after training. But I'm sure she loves you, and probably a good time to play doctor and practice taking care of daddy. But you're doing a great job, obviously, with your career so far with the BKFC. You talked about how much you loved it, and excited to get back there. And I like the tactic you took. A lot of guys, you get a flash knockout like that, you have put on the big performance. A lot of people are just gonna call others out and try to make your name by climbing up that ladder by grabbing someone else. But you came out and said in that interview, I haven't done enough yet. I'm not gonna come in there and just start talking trash. So we'll see what is next for you in the BKFC. We look forward to it. But before we get out of here, I want to talk about you talk about lifting, you talk about training. those are big important things you do to help pay the bills, take care of your daughter. But I saw a lot of modeling as well. Most guys 6'5". I'm 6'5", 260. No one's hiring me to be taking pictures of me. I don't even like looking at pictures of me. But you got your modeling that you've done as well, and also we're on a reality show on YouTube for that as well, right?
Yes, yeah, I did a lot of modeling. I was considered, I guess, I was paid for it. So I was a professional model for about 2 years, and oddly enough, I picked it up during COVID to help pay bills. When I was in Kansas City before I moved to Dallas, a lot of the gyms I worked for closed, and a few of them never reopened. We all remember how the pandemic was. It ruined a lot of stuff. So I picked up modeling to help pay all the bills, and I ended up being pretty good at it. And I made a good amount of money while I was doing it, and you know, a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication went into it. But in the end of it, I wasn't in love with it. It was just helping pay the bills at the time. So that's why I kind of stopped doing it when I got down here into Dallas and started working full time at gyms and training again, and then fighting more. It just doesn't, I don't think it correlates enough and works enough to keep doing it.
It's funny, you know, because you say, you know, you didn't love it, your heart wasn't in it, and that, you know, that it was, you know, you make just a way to make money. As most people would say the other way about the fighting, but obviously your heart is in that, you love it, and you put in a great deal of work, and it showed for sure with your debut with the BKFC in Kansas City. So Anthony Garrett, thanks so much for joining us. It was, you know, enjoyable watching you fight. We look forward to seeing you again with the BKFC.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
I told y'all time and time again, Trey Murphy the third. Trey Murphy the third. I'm telling y'all, this guy can absolutely ball as a 3-and-D guy, and he's going to take the next step.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
His home debut in the Windy City in a preseason game, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Chicago wins as a touchdown favorite.
Your first 3 drives with the starters and Caleb, those were 3-and-outs with nothing to gain. Now, you do see the talent on those off-schedule plays that you love to see, but that's not something you're going to be relying on in the NFL against starters. More than likely, you're either going to get yourself injured by running around like that.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
One change in the legislature in Missouri is that this guy who's just totally against sports betting there is not going away.
This has been in progress since last fall. They got 300 and some thousand signatures. All they needed was 170, but those were all certified by local election boards. That had to be done by earlier this month. By tomorrow, the Secretary of State has to verify all those signatures.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. And we have a little break from the action this week before they go up to Edmonton for that Prospect Series card. And while we always love the fights, one good thing sometimes when you get that little break is you get a little chance to look ahead more and digest more of what is coming down the line, because there's going to be some great cards, some loaded cards as we've seen announced throughout the past months that'll be coming up in September, October. You got a lot of great action going up in Utah, down in Miami, Florida again, down in Hollywood, Florida. You got, of course, the card over in Spain, which I think we're going to hear a lot of the fights of those being announced soon as well. But, speaking of that Hollywood, Florida card, we got some fight announcements on that one, and this thing is going to be loaded, let me tell you. From top to bottom, they pretty much laid out the whole card, and they always put on a great fights down in Hollywood, Florida. Of course, that was where, you originally had the Knuckle Manias before they started moving them around the country and letting other places get a taste of what BKFC is truly like with the best fights, best cards, the most loaded from top to bottom lineups. We're going to get one of those again in Hollywood, Florida, coming up for BKFC 66, September 13th, of course. Now, the main fight in that one is a big one. It is huge, but underneath that, it gets maybe even better as we keep going on. You have those top fights that we talked about briefly for a while there with the two titles. The bantamweight title up for grabs between Blaz and Reber. Then you have you have also the non-title fight, between Dave Mundell and King Mo. Of course, Mundell a title holder, but not fighting in his title weight class there, moving back up to 185, going to be welcoming King Mo Lawal into the BKFC. So we've known about those for a couple weeks, and those, of course, are awesome fights. Those get you excited. We've been excited for a couple weeks about them. But then when you see the rest of the card get filled out, it makes you even more amped to go, and maybe even go down to Florida and not just watch, maybe go. Maybe watch ringside or get some tickets, because it's going to be a sack card when you look at what they are putting together. Starting with the welterweight bout between another, former title holder and Luis Palomino. Baboon is coming back against Fames in that fight at welterweight. Now, of course, Palomino held that welterweight title before, then lost it for his first loss in the BKFC to Austin Trott in February. We no longer, have him as the title holder there, but he was a double champ at that time. He was the lightweight champ as well. No longer listed on the lightweight rankings as the champion. We'll look into that and talk about that a little bit in the next segment before we get out of here. But coming in here again, fighting at welterweight against a guy in Fames who was 3-4 in the BKFC after losing in March to Meyer. Now, Fames has been up and down. There's been some fights he's put on that's been, really good. Some of them that left a little to be desired. I think usually fought more at, 155, maybe 145. So here fighting at 165, maybe not his most natural weight class. So we'll see what that, happens against Palomino, or maybe that's the weight class he wants to move to. Maybe he got tired of depriving himself, of a little extra energy and strength, and is going up to fight a little bigger, and he'll do that against Luis Palomino. If you're going to fight at a different weight class, fighting against a guy who was a former champion in this and another division is a tough leap, but Palomino is going to do that against Fames and welcome him to this division, and probably give him a long night, but we will see how that goes. Maybe that makes Palomino 10-1 and gets him back into title contention picture in one of those divisions. You also have the heavyweights going to swing at it. Perdomo versus Banks. Now, Perdomo, of course, bursting onto the scene over the last little while, has been incredible at heavyweight. 4-0 for the BKFC, getting attention from all kinds of fans. Even Conor McGregor shouting him out after his last fight. Banks is 3-1. Of course, you might not have seen him as much because he's fought in the Thailand promotion, in the UK promotion. Now Panda Banks coming over and fighting in the US. His last fight was a loss to Mick Terrell in November. So definitely nothing to sneeze at. This guy has fought the best of the best overseas, and now he's coming to the US to see if he can take a little wind out of the sails of Perdomo, who has been a guy hyped up here in the BKFC, now on those heavyweight rankings, looking to get into title contention, and Banks is looking to stop that on him. You also have Pitbull Smith versus Tomahawk Townsend at cruiserweight. Two guys that are violent, two guys that are aggressive. Do not get up and go to the bathroom at any point during this fight, or go get a drink or something to eat, because you might miss a finish. These guys are going to go in there looking for heads. Smith hasn't fought since he lost to Houston Alexander last May. That was a tough, long fight for him. Townsend 2-3 after back-to-back losses. But again, even though these guys might not have the shiniest records, these are two guys that are going in there to do damage, to hurt. This is not, a situation where these guys are looking for a decision. Now, you may get there because they are very tough. They do have good chins, but this is not the end goal for either of those guys stepping into the square circle. They are looking to finish their opponent. So it is going to be violent and bloody, and it's going to be a battle between those two. You just hope that the doctors don't step in at some point and stop it. You also have, of course, Dade County's own Howard Davis going to be returning to the square circle as well against Get Down Brown at lightweight. This could be a huge one to put these guys in title contention one way or the other. Both these guys have had incredible records. Davis coming off the P-Town Wilson win. Of course, he before that was the loss to Kai Stewart in the title at featherweight. So now he's back up at lightweight as he was after Wilson there. Now he's going against Brown, who's 3-0, has been making a name for himself, a local guy as well. So these two guys from Florida, both of them, both looking to do damage to each other and step over the other one and get into title shot contention. And a win by either of them would clearly put them in that mix. We'll see if that is what comes, well, which guy is the one that gets that chance. And of course, you look at the rankings, look at the fights that are being made up and all those kind of things. But as it stands right now, a win by either of those guys could probably get them into a good position for a title shot. Then you also have Ibarola versus Street at bantamweight. Ibarola's on a 4-fight win streak. That's going to be interesting to see if he can keep it rolling against Street here in this fight. Very dangerous guy, very exciting. You also have Peraza versus Pell at welterweight. Peraza 1-0. He's going up in weight class from his debut and fighting Pell, who's 0-1. So, while you automatically would kind of assume the guy who's got the win is the one who's going to be the favorite, we'll have to wait and see because different weight class, different styles, all those things will factor in here and see if Peraza can continue and become 2-0 in the BKFC or if Pell gets himself back to 500 at 1-1. And then also Laban versus Rodriguez at bantamweight. Laban 2-0. Rodriguez making his debut. D'Amico Laban's been very aggressive, very violent. Always enjoy watching that guy fight so far. We'll see if he can continue it against Rodriguez making his debut. But as we said, top to bottom, Hollywood, Florida, this is going to be a stacked card. This could easily be a pay-per-view card. It could be a Knuckle Mania. But as of right now, it's just going to be for you on the BKFC app. Wherever you watch the fights, it's going to be normal, but still going to be a great night of action, whether you watch it at home, whether you go soak in some sun there and go down to Hollywood, Florida. Either way, it's going to be great to watch, and we're looking forward to it. Looking forward to finding out some more fights on some of these other cards coming down the line as well, including, I believe, Dave Feldman that just said the Spain card will be coming out this week as well. Hopefully, we'll get to break that down a little more next week on the show.
Setup here, incredible matchmaking, incredible storytelling. Oh, you had to come here. All these fighters that step in here are warriors and all have my respect. And I'm into this game, yeah. We'll be into this, yeah.
And we are live here in the Maverick Center here in Salt Lake City, Utah, folks. What a night. It is going to be historic indeed for BKFC 56.
Whoever's the king of violence right here, this is going to be a great fight.
Harry on the target for the left hand. Right hand from my Perry, double jab. Who's the king of violence? I am!
Combat fighting in its purest form, bare knuckle fighting in the city of angels.
80 seconds remaining.
We've got the biggest announcement in the BKFC history we're about to make, so let's make that announcement.
What's up, Knuckle Mania? The notorious Conor McGregor here. Ladies and gentlemen, the huge announcement that I have for you today. Conor McGregor, myself, and McGregor Sports and Entertainment is now an owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Welcome to the big leagues. David Feldman, baby, we did it.
He's now an owner of BKFC with us, and we're going to take this thing all the way to the top now.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. We appreciate you spending the time with us to look at everything that was going on in the world of the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. Of course, coming off a great card in Kansas City, a good fight night with the smaller ring there that always provides action, and we got a lot of that for sure. Take a little break this week as there is no event planned for this week, but then of course next week back up to Canada, the Prospect Series up in Edmonton. So not a brief break, of course, in the action. We'll get right back into things, and then, of course, things roll on. September 6th, you have the Salt Lake card. You have September 13th down in Hard Rock. We have the October card in Spain. Lots of action coming down the road here for the BKFC. Once again, a short break, and only very short, because then right back to back, back-to-back cards. Once again, you got to give them a little rest. These guys like Dave Feldman, like our man Brian Sosha, Chris Lytle, Wheelock, they're on the road a lot doing these cards. So got to let them see the family at some point here and hang around for Labor Day, and then they'll be busy once again. But of course, one thing we want to take a look at here as we got a little break, it lets us reflect, look back at some of the things that we might not have broken down a lot because of all the fights that we had to look at and preview and recap. So why don't we look at the rankings this week? Because obviously with all these fights that we had these past couple of weeks, there have been some changes. Things have gotten mixed up a little bit. And what I want to look at in particular are 4 different sets of rankings. One of those we'll start with is the lightweight rankings. We talked before in the last segment, Luis Palomino is going to be fighting down in Miami, Hollywood, Florida on that fight card at welterweight. Now, of course, he was the welterweight champ. He was the double champ. If you look at the rankings right now, he's not listed as the lightweight champ, even though he never lost that belt. He lost the welterweight title to Austin Trout, did not lose the lightweight belt, listed as the number 1 contender for lightweight, not the lightweight champ. That's interesting. We'll see what comes after that. Does he continue at welterweight? Is it the cut down to lightweight something that he doesn't want to do at his age anymore and just wants to stay up there and try to go get his belt from Trout again? But now, it makes an interesting mix of who is up for that belt. Is Palomino just blocking the door and no one else can get through unless they get to him? Or do we put up a different situation where someone else gets an inter belt or just the straight up belt? Now we know number 2 there, Tony Loco Soto, is going to be fighting in Spain against Tenaglia for Tenaglia's UK belt. But if he wins that, is he automatically the US one as well, or does he have to fight for that? So we'll have to see there. Bryce Henry, of course, has a good mention in there. Tenaglia, as we talked about, in the mix. Bobby Taylor has a fight coming up. Howard Davis has that lightweight fight in Hollywood, Florida as well. So without Palomino being the champ, and some of these guys locked up in fights, whether it be for another title or just against other opponents, what is to come of the lightweight belt? We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully someone can get a hold of Feldman and ask him that, see what the president and founder of the BKFC has in the way of explanation for what's going on in lightweight. Maybe we get a tournament. That would all be cool, but still a lot of things need to be shifted out over the next couple weeks to find out what exactly is the status quo in that division. Then you go up 1 weight class, as we talked about. Welterweight's going to be where Palomino is fighting next and fought last. Maybe that's why he is no longer the lightweight champion. Of course, that is held by Austin Trout. But now, Jake Lindsay jumping up the rankings there as Elvin Brito falls. With the win over Brito, Lindsay becomes number 2. Brito down to number 5. Gets jumped by guys like Connor Tierney, Rico Franco, Jake Lindsay, and of course Trinidad Snake has been one for a while. We haven't seen him in a couple months. We'll see what is next for him after some great performances back to back to back. But after Austin Trout defends that belt, what is next? What happens within this top 5? Does Jake Lindsay go against a Trinidad Snake now for the chance at fighting for that title next? Does Connor Tierney go and fight someone else in the UK with his UK welterweight title and then come back to the US to kind of unify them? All that remains to be seen. We do have a champ there, but a lot in the mix there in that top 5 as well. Then you go to middleweight, where, of course, kind of a logjam at top because Dave Mundell is the champion. Number 1 contender is Mike Perry. We don't know what's going on with him right now. I've had the Jake Paul fight. Of course, Conor McGregor came out afterwards and said he's getting rid of him because of starting his own promotion and hasn't fought for that title because he's just been doing other fights against big names, trying to get big into big money and the influencers, all that kind of stuff. People who have a big following is what he's interested in. So he hasn't fought for that title, even though he's number 1 in line. Do some of these other guys end up jumping him? A guy like Coltrane, who now is in that top 5, after dropping in that top 5, after his loss against Zeb Vincent. He was up there. He was number 2. He was the last one to fight Mundell. Now drops because he got dropped by Zeb. Well, not get dropped, but he had the eye injury that gives him the TKO loss against Zeb Vincent in Kansas City this past weekend. Donald Sanchez has been out of action for a while. We know he was calling for a shot at that. And, of course, as we know and said, Mundell is locked up to fight King Mo of a weight class. So what happens for that? And then last but not least, pound for pound. This one's just a mess to me. We got to fix this, guys. I don't know who's dealing with this, but Lorenzo Hunt's a pound for pound number 1. He doesn't even have a title anymore because of his suspension. Mundell's number 1. Okay. Palomino, number 2. He has no titles anymore. Arnold Adams, number 3. Tied with Mick Terrell, who beat him for the heavyweight title. What is going on here? We got to figure this out. And then you got Houston Alexander, number 5. He hasn't even fought in like a year. What's going on? Hopefully we can figure some of this out next week when we come back here on SportsGrid for Bare Knuckle Fighting Main Event.